Well, Tony, I want to thank you for taking the time to share your experience with the Donor Motivation Program. And I think the first question that I have to ask you is, could you tell us a little bit about your background in the not-for-profit sector?
Sure, it's good to be chatting with you, Keith. Like most people in fundraising, I kind of fell into it by mistake or not certainly by purpose. Nobody, I think, grows up dreaming to be a fundraiser. But as I worked in non-for-profit, it just struck me how under-resourced not-for-profits are. And a lot of organizations have a lot of great causes, but simply do not have enough money to do what they want to do to fulfill their mission. And I personally kind of reached that frustration point, and I started fundraising. And you know what? I fell in love with the donors, especially some whom I was meeting who were just little old ladies, very self-sacrificial, and they became an inspiration for me.
So which organizations have you been with in your career?
Well, presently I'm with the Canadian Cancer Society. I've also worked with Habitat for Humanity and World Vision Canada.
And you've been with the Canadian Cancer Society, correct me if I'm wrong, because we were talking about it off camera, for almost 10 years now?
That's right. I'm 1 month off from my 10-year pin.
And how long have you focused on planned giving with the Canadian Cancer Society?
I was hired to develop their planned giving program, and so that's been my sole focus since I've been there.
And given your experience in the planned giving area, what would you say is your greatest challenge in working with donors to raise awareness and raise money around planned giving?
It depends on the donor, obviously, but for a lot of donors, they realize they need a will and they haven't gotten a will. They might have a will, they don't think they can leave a charity as a beneficiary of their will. And also there's a degree of privacy when it comes to wills. And as a charity, whenever I've kind of offered these sort of financial tips or nudges, they were always viewed with a bit of skepticism because correctly, they see as, I have my own sort of agenda, which might not be what is best for them. So there's always that trust barrier when it came to planned giving.
Now, we all know there's any number of different tools to raise awareness around planned giving with our donors. Direct mail, presentations, referrals, tea and banana bread in the afternoon at their kitchen tables. What attracted you to the Donor Motivation Program as one of those tools to consider?
Yeah. Again, one of the challenges when you use direct mail, when even the one-on-one meeting, is even though someone might be very, very interested in leaving a bequest to the charity, they won't tell you, and they won't seek advice from you. They won't even have the discussion with you. It's a very private matter for them. And so what the Donor Motivation Program does for us is it becomes a third party. So it's the Donor Motivation Program presenters, such as yourself, Keith, and others, who are presenting the information. And therefore, the donor is actually a bit more at ease in getting that information from the charity. They say, well, here is somebody who is a financial advisor who's giving me this advice, with whom I can have a private one-on-one meeting with, and Tony's not going to know what we're discussing. That actually gives them a lot of comfort and a lot of reassurance.
Tony, I know when we started working together, you had some interesting experiences in regard to planning presentations around estate planning, gift planning, and they didn't quite work out to your expectation then. I'm wondering if you can share with us your direct experience.
I think similar to a lot of charities who try to organize estate planning seminars, there's a number of pitfalls you can fall into. One is you try to just dump a lot of information on people, and you hire an estate lawyers. Don't get me wrong, I love estate lawyers, but their presentation can be really dry, really full of legal language, and it loses people. And also, as I mentioned before, there's that trust factor. Here's the information coming from a charity. Can I really trust this information? And so typically, whenever I try to organize one of these, I'd get like less than 10 people out, which again makes it a very bad dynamic here. You have very few people in a very large room. I even went so far once as I got a very, very senior person from one of the large banks here in Toronto to make the presentation. This person has a show on the business TV network, and I thought surely this person would draw them in, but again, it was completely flat. So whenever I try to do this, it has not worked.
And as a corollary to that experience, many CEOs and executive directors of charities say, well, we already have allied professionals in our network. We have board members, lawyers, CAs, CFPCAs, CGAs that can do this type of presentation for free.
Right.
What do you say to them when they come up with that objection?
Well, there's two things. One is nothing's ever free. Oftentimes, and I'm sorry to say this, but it's true, there are some people out there with not the highest motivation, and what they're really motivated about is building their client list. And what I like about the DMP is I'm getting someone who's been vetted, who knows their stuff about charitable planning also. And then this person works for me, so they can't come and just try to take clients. That's not the goal of the presentation anymore. It's about serving our clients.
I remember you once said that if I don't do what you tell me to do, you're going to whack me over the head. Well, you can't necessarily do that for a board member or an allied professional, unfortunately.
Well, exactly. And so, as the old saying goes, nothing is for free.
When we were organizing our first presentation, I'm wondering if you can relate the story about the list that you had us work with and what happened in regard to the invitation system, which we've tested over now 20 years to make sure it can deliver donors to the room. But you understandably had some reservations, and it's a great story.
Well, when we had our conversation and you told me all about the DMP, and I said, okay, I think this can work. But I was 100% sure, and I still had the scars from all the presentation I tried to organize that didn't work. And so, I smiled politely. I said, yeah, Keith, we got this great list that we can invite from. And yes, as a side note, the invitation system absolutely works from DMP. A lot of people like fidgeting with it. I fought the battle with the brand police to get their hands off of it, but the system works, and I can absolutely vouch for that. But what I did, and now, is I actually gave you the B list. I didn't want to give Keith my best plan giving prospect, so I gave Keith my B list, and he hit that one out of the park. So after that, Keith got my A list.
And we've been working for, I know we've been working for over half a decade now. Wow. And it's essentially the same list, roughly. It's absolutely the same invitation.
Yes.
And it keeps on delivering 30, 40 plus people in the room. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing to remember here is if someone gets an invitation and they don't show up, they don't sign up, it doesn't mean they're not interested. It just means that date didn't work out for them. And it probably means they're not at that point in life where they're thinking seriously about this. But you plant that seed, and with the repetition, at some point they're going to say, oh, I need to update my will. I better go to this presentation. Or, my best friend just passed away and his estate was in shambles. I better get to this presentation. So whatever that trigger event eventually is, just because you're inviting the same pool, you're going to get different people signing up each time.
And I remember that first presentation we had, and although we're focusing on plan giving, we had a little old lady, a wonderful person, let's call her Miss Margaret because that was actually her name, that came out. She was in a wheelchair, she had to be helped. And could you share with us what happened as a result of her coming out to that presentation. Again, these are plan giving presentations, but
Yeah.
something wonderful happened also during that first event.
Right. So this lady who's a donor has been a monthly donor for a long time. Her solid $50 a month, and she came out to this presentation. She was in her 90s, but still very sharp. And she signed up for the follow-up meeting with Keith. And what came from that meeting was she had all these charities in her will, and her estate couldn't use up all the tax credits. In fact, what would be best for her if she donated some money now? So in that situation, we were in this donor's will. She never told us, but now we found out. And then she was able to make a large major gift in her lifetime, and she left us the bequest like she would have anyway. So that was really a win for everybody.
And if my memory serves, that was over a six-figure gift.
Yes,
that
that's
came
right.
to the first. That came from the first presentation. Now
That's
that doesn't
correct.
happen all the time, but by the very act of getting to know your donors face to face and putting a face to the name, I think it helped strengthen your donor relationships and the dozens and hundreds of people that we've met as a result.
Right.
It doesn't just benefit the plan giving program, but also benefits many other aspects of your fundraising.
Right. And that's in fact how we promote it. We invite our most loyal donors to a DMP presentation, and we position it, and correctly, it's not like smoke and mirrors positioning, but it's positioned as a premium. This is because of your loyalty. Please come to this seminar if you're interested.
Now, as I mentioned earlier, we've been working with each other for over 5 years now. And I know you, being the very organized, metric-oriented, goal results person you are, you've actually associated what you've invested with what has come out of the donor motivation program. Could you tell me a little bit about the dollar outcomes? And not
Sure.
that they can be guaranteed, but after a few years, it tends to smooth out the data and you get a pretty good idea of what you can expect.
Right. Sure. So on the revenue side, I track very closely what our average estate is worth to us, and it comes out to be $100,000. That's high in a charity space, but cancer is a very compelling cause. I think overall in Canada, the average charitable bequest is around $40,000-$50,000 or so. And so after each DMP presentation, we on average get about 3 people who make a gift. And this could be a gift in their will, this could be a gift in their registered retirement plan. And so for us, the revenue is about $300,000 for each event. And on the expense side, it's not that much, and it's mostly mailing costs. It's all in, including the fee for DMP and Keith is about $15,000. So that's a huge ROI. And even if you want to do a present value calculation, these people aren't going to pass away for another 20, 25 years, you're still looking at a 10-to-1 ROI easily.
Now, DMP, you've been around the block a few times. This is not your first rodeo. What would you say is truly unique about the donor motivation program?
Most of all is the presenters. They are all, without exception, charitable themselves. They personally support the charitable sector. Many are volunteers, donors, they sit on boards. And so I know I'm working with someone who believes in the sector and is committed to the sector. There are people who are highly trained in their craft. They have an established, successful practice. So it's not just some new guy who just got his license kind of thing. And yeah, it's just been a real pleasure working with every DMP presenter. You have a good system, you're committed to seeing my success. It's been a great partnership.
And we've talked about the benefits of the program from the Canadian Cancer Society's perspective, but we hear this word bandied around, donor-centric, a lot.
Yeah.
How would you see this program has actually benefited your donors, particularly?
I think on the short terms, our material benefit is they save taxes on their estate, possibly taxes while they're still alive. But I think what really works with DMP is that we're getting to know the donors, we're getting to know their values. So we're recognizing the donor has some trepidation about talking about their estate plans of a charity. And we present a way in which we recognize that, and we're still going to be able to work with them. And as you begin engaging with the people who come out to these presentations, you just build that relationship, you build that common values. A lot of charities like to say donor-centric, and they interpret that as good customer service. DMP goes beyond that. Yes, there's good customer service. We have a very efficient invitation system, registration system, but it's really about being able to engage with donors on that values level.
And I think my penultimate question, Tony, has to be, we've got this program, we've been doing it for a while, it's working out. Like, why wouldn't you just do it on your own, knowing what you know now?
Great. Yeah, when I retire, I'd be glad to be a DMP presenter, but I'm not quite retired yet. And again, back to what I said, we need that third party to make this presentation, or else the donor view the information with suspicion. So we need to put that fear away. And I can't do that, because if I give them the exact same presentation, the exact same information, it's like, oh, Tony just wants to build the coffers of his charity. But when they hear it from a DMP presenter, they know, okay, this is genuine information, this is for me, this is going to benefit me. And when it benefits the donor in this way, it benefits the charity immensely.
And my final question is, if someone who is watching this or listening to this is thinking about hiring a donor motivation program consultant, what would be your final words?
Have that initial conversation. It doesn't cost you anything, maybe an hour of your day, but it's worth that hour to at least begin exploring this. Just speaking from myself personally, the Canadian Cancer Society, this is a program that has really, really worked for our plant giving program.
Tony Lee, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure working with you all these years, and I look forward to working with you many years more.
My pleasure.